Video this evening. I appreciate it. Hope and pray you've had a good day. We are approaching Good Friday and trying to take our time and go through the week that Jesus went through, looking at things on a day-by-day basis. So we were able to do that for Sunday and Monday, and today is Tuesday. And my goal is simply to look at the events in Jesus' life on Tuesday of the week that we would call Holy Week. But before I jump in there, I just want to remind you of a couple things. Tomorrow night at 6:30, we will be having a communion service here, the Lord's Supper service. At 5 o'clock, I will be doing the Wednesday video as part of this series. I'm going to do that probably from my house at 5 o'clock, and it'll be very brief. In fact, Wednesday is a very not a whole lot of activity. There's a few things that are implied, and I'll be able to cover that tomorrow around 5 o'clock. And then here at 6:30, we will be having the Lord's Supper. So I really hope and pray you'll come. I'm inviting you. We'd love to have you. It is the one thing that we do. The Lord asks us to do it. It is an ordinance of the church that He asks His people to do. And it simply calls us to remember how our salvation was granted to us, what it cost the Son of God, what it benefits us, and how it benefits us. And so we will have that time tomorrow night where we will just fully observe the Lord's Supper, think about what Jesus has done for us. Good Friday is looming, and we know a lot of Thursday night, a whole lot of things happen. And we're going to work our way through that in these devotions. On Friday, Good Friday is, they will be having a Good Friday service for the community at Steubenville at noon. If you would like to go to that, I don't know your schedule, but if it opens up to where you can go, you're certainly invited to go. It's typically a fairly brief service because, again, a lot of people come on their lunch break or something like that. So we designed that service to be short on purpose so more people can come. I'm not even sure where I'm going to be on Friday yet, but if you would like to go, you're certainly invited. And then Sunday morning or Saturday, we're having the event in our parking lot for our kids in our church and our community. Becky and Tilly have that worked out, and if you just show up at 2 o'clock, you don't have to get out of your car. The way I understand it, it's going to be different stations. You drive up and you will get the story of Easter. You'll get it in a nutshell. The kids will be given a little bag to take home with some snacks in it and things like that. So all that's ready for 2 o'clock. You might want to check with Becky and Tilly, see if they need any help with anything for Saturday. I think they've got everything covered, but if you're free and would like to help, I'm sure they could appreciate it, an extra set of hands or legs around here on Saturday. And then we have 2 services on Easter Sunday. 8:30 will be our first service. And again, that service is provided hoping that some of the folks who haven't been able to come, some of the folks who've been very leery about being around the crowds, it'll be a thinner congregation, I'm sure, at 8:30. And Scott will lead us in a couple of songs. I'll preach, and we'll let you go. But I hope and pray you can come to either service. Glenn will teach Sunday school around 9:30, and then at 10:30 we'll have our normal service. And so we're offering 2 in hopes that more people can come. We had a really good crowd Sunday. Again, great crowd. It was one of the biggest crowds we've had in a long time, in a year anyway. And so I hope people are wanting to come back. I certainly have prayed for that, and I know a lot of our churches are praying their folks will return, and so we'll see how that goes. A lot to pray for, and again, I'll say this, and then I'll hush. I don't know. I've been watching all my headlines on my phone today, and it looks like there's more of a surge coming with more COVID cases. So again, I just want to encourage you to use your head, do the things that you know to do to be careful, from washing your hands to your mask and all of those things. Apparently the numbers are escalating pretty significantly in some places as more of us are lowering our guard. And I confess I've done that. And so I'm trying to be careful. And again, we're not out yet. We're not out of the woods. And so I am thankful for the things we're able to do, but try to be careful. Don't drop your guard too much, because apparently it's another wave is coming. So I certainly hope and pray it doesn't reach us here, but only time will tell. Well, it is Tuesday in the life of Jesus. I won't keep you long. Everything is building up. Each day things escalate. In fact, tomorrow will be the day they actually hatch the plan to kill Jesus. Tuesday is a day that, if you're just looking at the big events, there's not a whole lot of walking as much as there is talking. Jesus says a lot of things on Tuesday if our timing is accurate. And I'm I was really kind of struggling on how to do this, because there is too much to cover in a devotional video like this, especially in the 15 to 20, 30-minute realm. And so I'm not even going to try to do that. It's enough to say that I told you just sort of the quick summary. After Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead, the crowds went crazy. His popularity was going through the roof, and we quickly find out that they want to destroy Jesus. We also find out they want to kill Lazarus. And as Jesus makes his way towards Jerusalem on that Sunday, he looks over the city. He knows that destruction is coming to the city in a few years, in AD 70. He knows what's going to happen to it. It breaks his heart. He hears the praises of the people, but he also knows that they don't understand who he really is. And John is kind enough to tell us that in many ways, even the disciples didn't really fully understand. And I always try to remember that, because it's real easy to get real pious and act like, well, why didn't they just do it the right way? But I have every reason to believe, had we been there, we would be doing just what they would have done. There would have been a lot of things we wouldn't have understood. There would have been a lot of things that maybe, at least in the way we would categorize it, didn't make a whole lot of sense. Nobody wanted, the 12 didn't want Jesus to die. The expectations of Messiah that the nation had nothing to do with him dying. That's not what they were thinking about. And so there's a whole lot of things out there, but we do know that the religious leaders are very, they're looking for their move. They're looking for a way. And on Tuesday, when Jesus begins to say all the things that he's going to say, one of the things that you'll notice if you pay attention, especially, and really you're only going to find the Tuesday events in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. John actually goes, if I'm looking at this right, John actually goes from Sunday, that triumphal entry in chapter 12, and he jumps right into the next we hear of John as far as the timeline goes. It's Thursday night. It's John 13 from chapter 12 where he enters. Then in chapter 13 he's having the Passover and the upper room discussion with the disciples. And so he doesn't touch these things that we're talking about on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. But Matthew, Mark, and Luke do. And one of the things I would just encourage you to do before I say my little bit here, it's kind of one of those that if you really want to get your mind around the things we're talking about, you can't just read Matthew, you can't just read Mark or Luke. In fact, to really get the week of Jesus in your mind, you need to read all four Gospels, especially the from the triumphal entry on. It's and the book of John, especially, you might want to read chapter 11 before chapter 12 because it speaks of Lazarus. So all of that is the kickoff. All of that starts this countdown. And I say that in a way that you know what I mean by that. That the date with the cross is underway, and things are happening now at a very rapid pace. And on Tuesday, a whole lot of things are done. A whole lot of things are said. Jesus, and I just want to touch on some of these because you can't cover them all. But we know on Tuesday, according to Mark's gospel, that's when they walk by and they see that the fig tree has died. And Matthew kind of puts it in one event, and we talked about that yesterday. But on Tuesday morning, they walk by, they see the tree, and then things just take off. Jesus begins to speak about a lot of things. He goes into the temple, and really the way one of my study Bibles describes this, you're looking at what's called temple controversies. For the first part of the day, Jesus is in the temple having a lot of discussions about a lot of things, and then we get into the Olivet Discourse, which is the second main part of Tuesday. And again, these are all really, really big subjects. So let me just touch on a couple of things. First of all, when he goes into the temple, one of the questions that is lobbed right at him, right out of the gate, is, by what authority are you doing this? And this is from the religious leaders. These are the folks who are watching him like a hawk. And one of the things I noticed in looking through the story, it doesn't take long at all. Beginning in Mark or Matthew 20:21, the Tuesday account starts somewhere around verse 20 or 23, depending on who you want to follow here. But as soon as he enters the temple, you hear of the chief priests and the elders, and I think Mark and Luke throw in the scribes. These are the folks who come initially. And then just in a very short fashion, you start seeing the Pharisees, the Herodians, the Sadducees. And again, a lot of groups are mentioned, just bang, 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 bang. And Jesus is conflicting with all of them. So I want you to notice that. This authority question is basically saying you don't have the right to be doing any of this. Who do you think you are? And if you remember yesterday, Jesus said, "This is my house. My house was supposed to be a house of prayer, and you've turned it into a den of robbers." So that didn't go over well. And really, that's really the key. That the heat is turned up, the hatred is turned up, and now it is full bore. And Jesus is no longer withdrawing. He's no longer laying low. He is literally looking these guys in the face. He's saying things to them they're not used to hearing. And one of the things that he does is he calls them out on their fakeness, on being insincere, being hypocrites. He talks about how you like to be seen in public, you like wearing your robes, you like looking religious, you like all the attention it brings you, but you have nothing to offer anybody. And this is, again, this is heavy words from Jesus. And so this authority question is one of those things right out of the gate. By what authority? In fact, that's how Matthew says it. By what authority are you doing these things, and who gave you this authority? Well, instead of telling them what he thinks, he comes back and he says, "I will ask you a question, and if you tell me the answer, then I will also tell you by what authority I'm doing what I'm doing." And then he asks him about the baptism of John, and this is in all the synoptics, and it says, from where did it come from? From heaven or from man? And it says here that they discussed it among themselves, over there whispering in a corner, and they say, "If we say from heaven, he will say to us, then why did you not believe him? But if we say from man, we are afraid of the crowd, for they all hold that John was a prophet." So they answered Jesus, "We do not know." And he said to them, "Neither will I tell you by what authority I do these things." Now again, nobody talked to these folks like this. And Jesus is just, like I said, it is time for the gloves to come off. It is time to have those serious discussions, because again, time is short. It's Tuesday here, 6:30. Give or take 6:45, to think about Thursday night. It's just a couple days away, and all of this is building momentum. It's all going to happen. Jesus speaks of other things over these next few chapters, talking about and highlighting a lot of things that have really just fallen flat. The Sadducees, the Pharisees, this religious group. They were supposed to be leaders. They were supposed to be pointing people to God. They were supposed to be leading the people in the right way, and they simply weren't doing it. And Jesus shines the spotlight on that what they've done is absolutely worthless. It looks religious. We learned this from the fig tree. We learned this from the temple. From the outside, it looked like a haven for getting to know God. And yet at the same time, There was nothing of any merit there. There was nothing of value there, not on the fig tree, not in the temple itself. The temple had become something totally opposite of what it should have been. And Jesus, again, when he points this stuff out and says it the way he does, you have to know steam is coming out of their ears. They hate him. They love the life they have. Now keep in mind, and I always think that's interesting when I read this. I think about how good they think they have it. And again, he calls them out on this. You like the attention you get from all this. In fact, he says this to them. Let me read this to you. It says that Jesus, and this is in chapter 23, it says, "And Jesus said to the crowds and to his disciples, the scribes and the Pharisees, they sit on Moses' seat. So do and observe what they tell you, but not the works they do. For they preach, but they do not practice." And now this is just teeing up. He's just getting started. "They tie up heavy burdens hard to bear and lay them on the people's shoulders, but they themselves are not willing to move them with their finger. They do all their deeds to be seen by others. For they make their phylacteries broad and their fringes long, and they love the place of honor at feasts and the best seats in the synagogues and greetings in the marketplaces and being called rabbi by others." Now, he could not be more direct. He could not be more accurate. It's the kind of thing that everything you study and read, you almost think that some of the average people walking around know this to be true, because it seems to be a very visible fakeness. And that's what Judaism had become. And again, all of these things begin to unpack. The Sadducees take a shot at him, the Pharisees, multiple shots, the scribes, the chief priests, and the Herodians. All of these groups in Matthew are going to come right at him just on Tuesday, all on this day. And Jesus is going to hold his own with all of them. And there's going to be enough failures within those ranks to explain a whole lot of things. In other words, God expected more. Their job was to keep the truth in front of the people and to walk that way, to talk that way, to teach that way. And you can already tell that Jesus he's not impressed with anything. What he sees is an utter failure. Multiple times, and since we don't have time to unpack all this, and this was my struggle. Tuesday was the day I dreaded, only because there's 10 hours worth of stuff here to talk about, and I'm trying to do 20 minutes or so, and it's hard to do that. But it's enough for you to know that if you take the time and read, and most study Bibles have a chart telling you what happened on Tuesday. And most of these agree pretty closely. Maybe there might be a verse or two or a point or two that they're not quite clear on, but I've never seen anything that I would call heretical or anything like that. So depending on what Bible you like and who the publisher is, there might be a little difference here and there, but it's very small and insignificant. But in all of this going on, Jesus is on his game. And he's saying the things that need to be said. And one of the heavy parts in reading from Matthew 23, and this I did want to draw attention to, after he says all of that, what I just read to you, where he's just laying it out there, he breaks into what's called the 7 woes, where he addresses the Pharisees, the scribes. He calls them blind guides. He calls them hypocrites. And he starts breaking them down. In other words, he tells you what these guys really are. And again, it is one of those moments that if you have a little bit of an imagination, Jesus could not have been more godlike, because he calls them out. No one, I mean, these guys were so used to all this attention. They were so used to being religious. They were so used to being respected, the best seats in the synagogue, being called rabbi out on the street. They loved every bit of it. And then Jesus comes along. And again, this helps explain, not only does it help explain why they hate him so much, but Jesus, and the way he talks to them, you find out what's really going on. And that's something that you can't miss. Okay, this is not just they don't like Jesus. Jesus is exposing them for who they are. And the truth, what they should have been doing, is highlighted, and they have failed. And so what you have here is the theme of judgment. You have the theme of just total and utter hypocrisy. And these are the leaders. I just want to read you the sentence of each of the 7 woes. This is in Matthew 23. Again, I've got notes from Mark, Luke, and John and the whole bit, but we can't cover all that. But I want to listen to what he says to them. After he says that, which was bad enough, now come the 7 woes. But woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For you shut the kingdom of heaven in people's faces, for you neither enter yourselves nor allow those that would enter to go in. Not only are you not going into the kingdom, you're keeping others from going in. Now, that's a heavy thing to say to a leader. Then, number 2, woe to you, scribes and Pharisees and hypocrites, for you travel across the sea and land to make a single proselyte, and when he becomes a proselyte, you make him twice as much a child of hell as yourselves. Now, each of these have just a bang moment. This is the judge who is never wrong speaking, the judge who knows everything. And so what he is, and this is right at them. Number 3, woe to you, blind guides, who say, if anyone swears by the temple, it is nothing. But if anyone swears by the gold of the temple, he is bound by his oath. Now, that's a little confusing to folks like you and I, but they had come up with some very elaborate ways to make an oath, to break your word, to protect yourself. It was very hypocritical. It missed the forest for the trees, and he's again, the spotlight is on this. The 4th one, woe to you, scribes and Pharisees and hypocrites, for you tithe mint, dill, and cumin, and yet have neglected the weightier matters of the law, justice, mercy, and faithfulness. These you ought to have done without neglecting the others. In other words, they totally ignored justice and mercy and faithfulness, but they stuck to their guns on tithing the tiniest little thing of mint and dill and cumin. In other words, they focused on these little things, made a big deal about them, and yet they ignored the larger things. That is, in many ways, that is the spirit of legalism. This is why the Pharisees stick out in our minds. And I say this in the nicest way I know how. They're still with us, okay? What Jesus, one of the reasons the 7 woes is such a powerful passage is because the Pharisaical mindset hasn't gone anywhere. It is still with us to this day, in every denomination, in every church, and there's that danger that we all have of becoming this and becoming like this, becoming better than other people, and behaving in such a way that we push people away rather than welcome them in, and all of this and if you study this, it is a very humbling study. I remember preaching through the 7 woes at Belfry, and it worked me to death because it was a very heart-aching thing to think about how we can all be at times. It's real easy to fire shots at these guys, but at the same time, the spirit of that is still with us to this day. He goes on and he says, woe to you, this is number 5, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, you clean the outside of a cup and the plate, but inside they are full of greed and self-indulgence. And then number 6, woe to you, scribes and Pharisees and hypocrites, for you're like the whitewashed tombs, which outwardly appear beautiful, but within are full of dead people's bones and all uncleanness. So you are also outwardly appear righteous to others, but within you are full of hypocrisy and lawlessness. Now go back to the fig tree and the temple, okay? From the outside, it looked like there should be some content there. There should be some meat there. There should be something of value there. And we found out on Monday that the fig tree didn't have anything. It looked green, looked like it was ready, but there was nothing on it. And then the temple itself, it had the appearance of looking very religious, but yet it was very empty. And now he says that the Pharisees and the scribes themselves are this. You look like you've got it all together. You look like you're Jehovah's guys, and yet you are liars. You're hypocrites. You look the part, but you're not the part. And Jesus, again, this is, as this clock ticks, you understand every syllable matters. Every word, every discussion, and there's a whole bunch of them. That's why we can't cover them all. But this is adding putting more fuel on the fire, if you will, about what's to come. Number 7, woe to you scribes and Pharisees and hypocrites, for you build the tombs of prophets and decorate the monuments of the righteous, saying, if we had lived in the days of our fathers, we would not have taken part with them in the shedding of the blood of the prophets. Thus you witness against yourselves that you are the sons of those who murdered the prophets. Fill up then the measure of your fathers, you serpents, you brood of vipers. How are you to escape being sentenced to hell? Now this is probably most of you, and I think I'm going to go out on a limb here and just say this. If you've ever read the Gospels, and I know a lot of you have, many of you have read them several times, you can pick up Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John and just take off reading and get caught up in the story. But when you get to this kind of stuff here, when you get into this final week and some of these lengthy discussions that Jesus has about the sins of the moment, it kind of gets a little overwhelming. All this other stuff, there's a miracle, he did this, and then he said this, and everybody responded a certain way. You can follow that. Then you get into this kind of stuff, and it gets heavy in a hurry. And one of the things you have to be careful of is not to let yourself think that you don't need to read this. We all need to read this. This is Jesus saying, when I have a people, and I know what they're supposed to look like, and you guys don't look the part. You may look like it to other people, and on the outside it may look really good, but I know what you are. And I guess I would just simply say this. He still does. He has every expectation to be able to think of us behaving and acting a certain way. And heaven knows we all have our moments where we flat drop the ball. We have moments where we're here, and then we have moments where we just, we're mad, we're angry, we're hurt. We say things we don't mean. We do things we never meant to do. All of those things take place for everybody. But there is this thing when it's all fake. You know what I mean? It's something that is a hard thing to see. And Jesus was seeing it not in some perimeter way, little synagogue out somewhere else, but right here in Jerusalem, at the capital, the actual centerpiece of Judaism. The heart of everything that they believed was right here. And yet all of this ugliness, all this outward appearance, fake stuff. So all of that factors in. And then finally, the second part of this, and I'm going to be brief, and those of you who've been around, if you read Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, you'll know about that Olivet Discourse, where Jesus on his way back out of town stops and gets into some pretty heavy scripture. This part is pretty heavy, but you can follow it. You can see what he's doing. Then he gets into things that start sounding like end times, starts talking about the destruction of Jerusalem, and some of that kind of stuff that's really heavy. And all I want to say on that, because there's a lot of disagreements, most of your schools of eschatology, people trying to figure out the last days and the end times, they have a lot of disagreements within the family of God. And when you go to school like I did, there's several different groups out there that believe different things about the book of Revelation, the book of Daniel, and all of that. But those are still peripheral things. The brotherhood of God's people continues because our focus is on the Lord Jesus. Our salvation is hinging on Him. That's what we'll celebrate tomorrow night. We all have different takes on different parts of the Scriptures. We don't all agree 100% on everything. But when it comes to being a Christian, we have to agree that Jesus is the only way a person can be saved. They don't have to have the same view that you have about eschatology. They don't have to carry the same version of the Scriptures that you carry. They don't have to have a certain understanding of codes or whatever the latest trend is now with people. It is Christ and in Christ alone that makes us brothers and sisters. And then these other things are peripheral. They're out here somewhere, and we figure out where we can agree and all of those things. In the Olivet Discourse, a couple things take place. Jesus talks about the destruction of Jerusalem. Then he speaks of his second coming. And there's a lot of questions about when is this going to happen. And some of the wording is kind of heavy. Some people think that there's various parts of it that you can tell relates to Jerusalem, what's going to happen in AD 70, just a few years after he leaves, the city will be destroyed. Then there's parts of it that sounds like he's talking about the very end when he does return. And then there's some verses that sound like they could apply to either or. In school, they called some of that stuff kind of like a double meaning or a double impact or a double prophecy of sorts, that some of this could be applied to what happened at Jerusalem, and some of it does relate to what's going to happen in the second coming when Jesus returns for the church. And so there's a lot of ways to look at that, and I don't think it's anything to get bogged down over, but it is interesting how Jesus talks so plainly about this. And one of the themes, and I'm going to stop here, one of the things that you take away from this, as this scene of judgment comes, a couple of things stick out to me, and I want to share those with you, and then I want to stop. First of all, Jesus speaks in such a way that everybody listening and all of us reading are told to be watchful. We're told to be careful. We're told that the Master is coming. We're told that soon he will come. We don't know the day. We don't know the hour. We don't know, but we are told to be ready. And there's an urgency in it that Jesus, and probably in early American life, as our churches were birthed and started popping up here in our nation, and even just 3 or 4 decades ago, that urgency was still very real. It was felt that Jesus could return at any moment, and we need to be ready. I don't think in the last 20, 25 years or so that's held up. I think a lot of us, we get focused on what we want the church to be. We talk about other things, and that urgency to be, that he would find us ready somehow gets lost. And no matter what your interpretation of the Olivet Discourse is, I promise you, if you give it a fair reading, one of the things you will close up with is, I need to be ready. I need to be. I'm a follower of Christ. I need, when he comes, I want him to find me ready, expecting the Master to come. Because Jesus said that's exactly what's going to happen. And in these verses, he speaks of how judgment will fall on those who aren't paying attention, how those who ignored the warnings, those who failed to take it seriously. Jesus addresses all of this kind of stuff. And so in his speeches, at times the people will they will marvel at what he said. At times they will be astonished at what he said, just amazed. And then there are times when they just get mad as they can be. And all of that's taking place on Tuesday. And so by the time his day ends on Tuesday, if things weren't bad enough as far as how they felt towards him, Tuesday would be the backbreaker, because he says some of the heaviest things in his whole ministry on Tuesday. And so that's how I think of this day. It is heavy. I know it's not exactly cuddle up kind of reading, but you and I are focused on the life of Jesus. We're focused on what he's here to do. And these things that he is saying had to be said. These things that he's pointing out had to be pointed out. And with that comes the weight of the world and warnings to you and I. I remember in school being told, the Pharisees never went anywhere. We still have the Pharisees with us to this day. We still have people that are very legalistic. We hammer on the little things and we ignore the bigger things that we're supposed to be focused on. And so there's a lot of wake-up calls in this. I know that we don't like words like judgment. We like to think of, we live in a day of grace and forgiveness and mercy and all of those things. And those things are true. But at the same time, the warnings that the Scriptures give us to be ready, that he might find us ready and find his church prepared and looking for him and expecting his return. He tells, in this section, you have the parable of the 10 virgins who, 5 have oil for the lamps and the other 5 do not. And then here comes the bridegroom. And the ones without the oil are saying, hey, give us some of your oil. And they say, we can't. I don't have enough for me and you. And so they're left out. The door is closed. And there's a lot of that kind of stuff in this Olivet Discourse that gives you that sense of finality. Judgment will come, and we will either be ready and prepared for it, or we will not. And for the Christian, it is to be looking to Christ, walking in him, being forgiven by him. His blood has cleansed you from your sin, and your life shows that. And that's where we all want to be found. I'm grateful for His grace. Heaven knows we all mess up. We don't always do it right. We know this. But He is gracious to us, and He loves us, and His love is not sidelined for anything. And so we have to keep going. And if you give these things a glance and a good read, I think you'll find it to be a little humbling. I did. I read this several times today, knowing that I would get in front of you and still not know what I wanted to say, because I'm trying to go so brief. But anyway, the theme of judgment is here. It is deserved. The warnings are there for folks like you and I to read and pay attention. Tomorrow, we will look at Wednesday. A few things happened that we're pretty sure happened on Wednesday. Not laid out as clearly as we'd like it to be, but we'll address that tomorrow at 5 o'clock. And then tomorrow night at 6:30, we will observe the Lord's Supper together. Thank you for watching tonight. Again, I'm just scratching the surface. That's all I could do with this day. I knew it when we started this, that Tuesday would be the bear. But thank you for taking time to watch this. I hope you found it to be helpful. Give those 3 Gospels a look in those passages we're talking about. And I think you'll find yourself really thinking about a lot of things. I know I have. And I've tried to share that with you best I could. But it's a lot. So thank you for taking time. Have a good evening, everybody. I love you guys. And Lord willing, I will see you tomorrow at 6:30, and I will also be doing a video at 5 o'clock, and you can watch that tomorrow at 5, or you can watch it anytime you want to, but it'll be online for you. So thanks again. Have a good